Hey y'all, this is Judith of judithtomorrow.com, Judith Tomorrow Design, and we're going to do our new moon reading. New moon was on Saturday, September 28th. Today's the 30th. I take the weekend off, so I didn't do this on the weekend. And we're going to start doing these slightly differently from the way that I have been before. I've actually sort of had this, like, how do I make this less abstract when I'm, doing a collective reading for, a whole bunch of people that I don't know the spaces of. It's hard to, get it down to the nitty-gritty, to the physical thing, the way that I can when I'm working one-on-one with someone. And so I'm going to start doing this within the context of what I'm calling the placemaker's journey, or the placemaking journey. And the concept behind that is that we're all making places all the time. And we're changing our place and we're changing our spaces. And so how I would like you to look at these readings, these new moon readings, is at the beginning of each new moon cycle, I'm going to set an energy of the kinds of actions, the kinds of changes that are most supported during this new moon cycle with the reading. And then at the new moon, I'm actually going to demonstrate how I'm using it in my physical environment, in my home, so that we're all approaching this as, here's the energy of the month. These are the kinds of spaces and changes that we can make during that month that support the energy that's here. And this is what it looks like. This is what a physical change would look like, a kind of physical change. And let's all do it together. So, thought I'd give that a shot. So without much more ado, I'm going to tell you the reading. So the first card that I pulled is called Last Stand. I don't know if you can see that really well because there's quite a glare. But this is basically, here we go. Maybe that's a little bit better. There we go. Kind of weird. But this is the top of somebody's head. These are some eyes. This is the nose bridge. And this is the hairline going up with little baby houses floating off into the distance. It's the seven of structure. I've talked about sevens before as cards that represent separation of space, contrast. In fact, last new moon was gateways, which is one of the seven cards. And Last Stand has to do with an action or a process sort of having its last hurrah on a certain level, completing itself, expressing its final expression before it releases these little houses into the air, until it releases its form and moves on to a new structure. So that is Last Stand. And the modifying card, which was very interesting to me, it always looks like it's upside down because it's a rotation card, is called Talk, which is also a structure card. And you can see there's a humanoid kind of a critter upside down here, and there's a house here, and a house here, and a house here, and there's a motion of rotation. All the three cards, which are about inward space, tend to be about circulation and rotation. So this is the three of structure, and it's Talk. Talk is an interesting card because it represents, so when we're creating something, when we're having an idea, all of the structure cards are about ideas, paradigms, visionary thoughts, that sort of thing. When we're having an idea, it's contained inside of our house, inside of our head, inside of our house, inside of our head, and then often the first expression of it is actually outside of ourselves, is actually words or talk. Other forms of it coming out of ourselves and taking physical matter on some level can be writing it down. It can be starting a project, like the initiation of a project. And the interesting thing about Talk is it's not just a inward to outward movement. It's a inward to outward to inward movement. So it circles, it cycles. So just like the way that if you have an idea, your first expression, either to yourself through writing or talking aloud or talking to someone else, lets you actually see what's going on in your head and feel how it feels when it's not just inside of our heads and outside and becomes part of the world in a more physical way. As we start to notice it outside of our own heads, it changes. It's like it's a place where we get feedback. So talk is this thing where you're like putting out, seeing what we've got, taking it back in, reformulating it maybe a little bit, and putting it out again. So this is a cycle of talk. And as I said, it can also happen through things other than talk. It could be the beginning of an art piece, or it could be written down. Anything that is that first process of coming outside of ourselves and into the world in some form. Together, these two cards, I would say, is summed up nicely if we call it the completion of a dialogue. So this month is the completion of a dialogue kind of energy that we can support ourselves with. How completion of a dialogue shows up in our environment. So if you imagine that there are many dialogues that we are having with objects in our space all the time, that some of these are stuck or stifled or on a run-on sentence or some other sort of thing, that they're not actually completing themselves. They're sort of in this perpetually moving cycle, but they're not necessarily going all the way, or else they've gotten this far and they get stuck for some reason and they haven't been able to finish. So this month, this moon cycle from September 27th to the next 28 days, this cycle is a time for us to look around our space and complete dialogues with objects. An example of that, I gave a great example of this recently, of like a stuck dialogue in my household. Someone thought that was very funny, but I painted my door a bright yellow, and in the process of painting my door bright yellow, I took the doorknob and the lock off. And my husband wanted to hang on to the old doorknob, oil it so that the lock didn't stick anymore, and then put it back in and see how it worked, because we've had a stuck deadbolt, and we also have, it's a kind of a shaky lock. It's like we don't have the key anymore. It's a shaky lock and so forth and so on, but he wants to salvage it and see how it works. I want to get a new lock. I want to get a new doorknob. And so we got stuck. We got stuck. So I have had no doorknob on my door for about 4 months now, and it's starting to get cold, so we got the wind coming in. So this is a dialogue that my husband and I need to complete, and we did. My kids came home briefly before they went off to college, and they're like, "Why don't we have a doorknob?" And I said, "Well, we got stuck. Owen wanted to use the old doorknob, and I wanted a new doorknob, and then my family voted him off the island. So we're getting a new doorknob, because there were all sorts of things wrong with it." But that is an example of a dialogue, an object that contained a dialogue between me and my husband, me and my family, that needed to complete itself before I could get that doorknob onto the door. And so that is going to be one of my main projects for completion of dialogue in this household during this month, is to get a doorknob on that door, because I've completed the dialogue, right? Now the rest of the completion of the dialogue is to actually put it into action. Another example of completing a dialogue that's affecting the space is that, and I think other people have heard about this, but I'm officially an empty nester right now. My youngest kid went off to college. My oldest kid is in college and has moved like into a house and has taken furniture at this point, right? So there's a change afoot, right? So, part of the space downstairs has been used for my son's sort of office, is now moved out. And so we're looking at that space to put my husband's office in there, his home office. And so the completion of the dialogue that needed to happen to that is, even though he's been very, very resistant to sitting down and digging out some of the nitty-gritties of like, how does he store things, what kind of office space is going to support him, how big the desk, all the things that I ask my clients. And he's been like, I'm too busy, I'm too busy, I'm too busy. He actually sat down with me, and we dug out I drew out a plan, and we dug out some parameters, and I'm starting to price things. So that is another example of a completion of a dialogue that is affecting space. That's the nature of this month. It can also be very small things. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Another completion of a dialogue I had was about some apples that were sitting in my refrigerator, and they're amazing heirloom apples, and they're either going to go bad or they needed to be sauced. But I had put sugar in them already because we were going to make a pie, and I never put sugar in my sauces, and I was like, I can't make this into sauce. That is a stuck thought. And I just completed the dialogue, my internal dialogue with myself, and said, I'm going to sauce these apples. And I did. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be like small things, noticing the projects around your house that have suspended thought processes that you haven't completed the thought with, and completing it, taking a little bit of time and saying, I'm going to make a decision about this. I'm going to have a conversation about this. I'm going to make a move on this. I'm going to make a final move on it. If it's a project that you never, ever, 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 ever are going to complete, I'm going to get it out of the house and complete it that way and say, thank you for everything that I've learned from you. The Marie Kondo goodbye approach, right? So this is the nature of the month. And I encourage you during this month, during this new moon cycle, to look around your space and see what objects are holding incomplete thoughts, see what spaces need to have conversations about them, and allow yourself to go through that process to complete them. Then at the full moon, we'll talk about whether I got the doorknob on or not and what other things have happened. And I hope that that is useful for you as well. So if you have any questions or any thoughts, or even if you want to post down below in the comments what projects you think that you're going to look at, that would be swell. And if you have any questions, I will try and answer them. And there will be other little bits and bobs of this process of placemaking happening on the YouTube, but my newsletter will only get the new moon and the full moon updates. So if you're interested in the full process of becoming part of the placemaker journey, which is going to last a year, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is the subscription button is somewhere down below. I think it's on my right side. All right. Thank you very much, and take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.